Let me ask you something that's going to stick with you for a while. A fisherman with decades of water in his blood, someone who learned to read the wind, feel the tide, and see the bottom through the color of the water, would that man lose to a screen full of blinking dots? It seems obvious. It feels like technology already won before the fight even started. But the water was never that simple. There is something the most advanced sonar on the market cannot map, something no GPS can capture. And it's exactly that detail that turns what looked like an easy victory into something far more complex and far more fascinating. Before diving straight into the clash, you need to understand what we're dealing with. Modern fishing sonar, also known as a fish finder, depth finder, or electronic locator, is a device that sends sound pulses beneath the water and reads the echoes that return. It displays depth, water temperature, bottom structure, schools of fish, and sometimes the individual silhouette of a large fish. High-frequency models can distinguish submerged obstacles with surgical precision. Underwater shelves, isolated rocks, sunken logs, transitions from sandy to muddy bottom. Everything shows up on the screen in real time, updating every fraction of a second as the boat moves. Old-school fishermen, on the other hand, carry a different kind of map. Built over years, season after season, stored inside the mind and felt through the fingertips. That's the story worth telling. There is something the experienced fisherman knows that rarely shows up in any manual. Water speaks, and it doesn't speak the same way to everyone. When a fisherman with 20 or 30 years on the water looks at a stretch of river or a specific point in the sea, he doesn't just see the surface. He reads it. The color the water takes on near a depth change, the way the current breaks around a submerged rock he has never seen but knows is there, the way birds dive about 100 meters downwind. All of that builds a picture that takes years to develop. This kind of reading is called watercraft, the ability to interpret the aquatic environment with precision and anticipate where fish are holding, before any piece of equipment confirms it. Fish follow rules that nature never canceled. Every fish in any environment is looking for three things: food, shelter, and oxygen. In a river, turbulent water near rocks carries high oxygen content and dislodges insects and small organisms. That draws fish in. Dense vegetation along the banks offers cover for predators and for the smaller species they feed on. A sandbar that drops off abruptly, creating a sudden depth change, acts as a transition corridor for dozens of species. The old-school fisherman learned all of this with mud on his boots, line on his finger, and the patience of someone who cast in the right place many times before he finally got it right. The sonar, in turn, sees what is under the water. But seeing is not the same as understanding. The screen shows an arc. The fisherman has to interpret whether that's a stationary fish, a moving school, a waterlogged branch, or an irregularly textured rock. Depth appears as a number. The experienced fisherman already knows which depth at that time of year, at that water temperature, is most likely to hold the species he is after. Here is the first thing that complicates technology's supposed easy win. Sonar displays data, but data without interpretation catches nothing. A beginner with the most advanced fish finder on the market can drift over a school for an hour without understanding what he is looking at. The veteran fisherman, without any screen in front of him, can reach that same spot guided by signals he spent decades learning to read. The angle of the shoreline, the color of the foam, the way the bait behaves on the hook as it passes over a certain kind of bottom. The real question is not which tool is more powerful. The real question is, who knows how to use what they have? Modern sonar has a genuine capability that changes the game, especially in open water fishing, deep lakes, and wreck fishing. A GPS linked to the fish finder displays the boat's exact position with an error margin of just a few meters. When you are sitting over a wreck at 40 meters of depth in open water with no visual reference at all, that precision is what separates a productive trip from a wasted one. The fish finder reveals the structure of the wreck, shows where fish are clustered around it, and pinpoints the ideal depth to drop a jig or a bait. In vertical fishing techniques, like offshore jigging, electronic equipment has become a core part of the method itself. Braided lines that change color every 30 meters help the angler control jig depth with accuracy. But it is the fish finder that confirms whether the jig is sitting in the same zone where the fish appear on the screen. Without that information, the whole session becomes a blind attempt. For species like bluefin tuna in deep water, blue marlin, and giant trevally, sonar is close to essential. These fish move fast, across enormous volumes of open water, and they rarely leave clues at the surface. A big-game fishing boat runs 2 or 3 sonar units simultaneously, each scanning a different angle, while the captain hunts the thermoclines, temperature layers where plankton concentrates, drawing in bait fish, which in turn attract the large predators. In that environment, the old-school fisherman without technology is at a genuine disadvantage, not because he is less skilled, but because the environment does not offer the cues he spent years learning to read in smaller, more familiar waters. The scale changes, the depth changes, the pace of the game changes. Now, I want to be straight with you about something most people skip right over when they talk about this. Sonar finds the fish, GPS marks the spot, but neither one tells you how the fish is behaving at that specific moment, whether it is in an aggressive feeding mode or sitting lethargic in the water column, whether the school is rising or sinking, whether the barometric pressure of the past few hours has shifted that species' behavior in any meaningful way. And it is exactly in that space, between locating the fish and convincing it to bite, that human experience still holds something technology has not replaced. There is a scene I find genuinely revealing about this whole debate. Two fishermen leave the same dock on the same day, headed for the same lake. One carries a top-of-the-line fish finder, integrated GPS, full-color high-definition screen. The other brings a simple rod, a tackle box, and 40 years of memory of that specific lake. The first fisherman finds fish within minutes. The screen does not lie. The school is right there, 8 meters down, near a submerged structure the GPS identifies as a tree that sank decades ago. The second fisherman heads directly to the same spot. No screen, no GPS. He simply knows that at this time of year, with this southerly wind and this water temperature, that sunken tree has always held the fish he is after. Both arrive at the same place. What happens next depends on something no piece of equipment in the world can insert into the equation: the ability to present the bait the right way, at the right speed, with the right movement, to convince a living creature to bite. Some species demand that touch. Sea bass in an estuary, for example, are highly sensitive to sound and movement. Boats moving noisily over shallow structures disturb fish before any equipment is even switched on. The experienced fisherman learned long ago that a quiet approach, oars, an electric motor, sometimes simply letting the boat drift, is as much a part of the technique as anything else. Sonar emits acoustic pulses. In shallow water, with species that are particularly sensitive, that signal can, in certain situations, alter the behavior of a school before the bait even arrives. That does not mean sonar is a problem. In most scenarios, in water deeper than 5 meters, the effect is minimal. But it points to a principle the veteran fisherman knows by instinct. Any disturbance in the water carries a consequence. Reading the water reaches beyond what technology can map. The color the surface takes on near a shifting sandbar, the foam pattern that signals an underwater current running along the bottom. These are signals the fish finder screen does not display because they were never coded in as variables. They exist in the language of nature, and only someone who has spent enough time on the water learns to decode them. The contest, then, is not sonar against experience. It is knowing how to use both. The final verdict on this clash is more layered than most people expect to hear. Modern sonar wins in specific scenarios with a clarity that leaves no room for argument. Open water with no visual reference, deep water wrecks, vertical jigging through long water columns, trolling for large pelagic fish in the open ocean. In those environments, the fish finder and GPS transform what would be a blind attempt into a calculated strategy. Anyone fishing those scenarios without these tools is at an objective disadvantage. But here is what the clash reveals when you look at it closely. Technology shortened the learning curve. A fisherman who has never set foot on that lake can locate structures in a single outing that a veteran spent 10 seasons discovering. The fish finder opened up access to underwater information in a way that was simply not possible before. That is real, and it cannot be argued away. What technology did not replace is the interpretation of behavior. Knowing where the fish is sitting is only half the equation. The other half, how to present the bait, what retrieve speed to use, at what angle the line should enter the water, how a fish responds to the specific movement of a jig on that day at that temperature. That still lives in the memory of someone who spent years repeating the motion until it became instinct. The most complete fisherman is not the one with the most advanced equipment, nor is it the one who distrusts all technology and operates on pure gut feeling. It is the one who understands that sonar shows you where to look, and that experience tells you what to do once you get there. Fishing has always been about trying to outwit nature, and nature, fortunately for those who love the water, is delightfully unpredictable. Sonar can map the bottom, But it will not tell you why, on that specific day, the fish that appeared on the screen turned away from every single presentation and only bit when you, almost by accident, let the line sink 2 meters deeper than usual. That detail, what the sonar cannot see, is what keeps fishing exactly what it has always been. A conversation between the angler and the water, where the last word is never guaranteed. Which side would you choose out there? The screen or the instinct? Tell me in the comments, because that answer says more about the kind of fisherman you are than any piece of gear on your boat.